started by putting your stuff away.
I know. I can tell I've completely lost.
I raised them and I roll around.
Yeah. I know, it's my fingers
I'm wearing
that get
gloves. I
crazy.
know.
Guys ready? The time is now 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance, please rise for the pledge. Mr. McGowan, will you please lead us?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or comments?
I did have one question. I noticed that we have the election of the officer, which I thought we had tabled until we were going to have a full board. Is there a reason that we're bringing that back prior?
Because we don't have a full board and I need somebody to take on that position before my term ends.
Okay.
Do I have a motion for the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is approval of the minutes for October 23rd, 2024 board meeting. Are there any questions or comments?
I had one on... There was one where it was the personnel action. I had asked for a clarification, and it said I voted no. I don't believe I voted no. I think I just was I abstained. And I noticed that Krista's not here, so she was the one who was going to be asking.
Yeah, she's not here.
But that, I wanted that double checked because I don't believe I voted no. I think I just was waiting for the clarification.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I move that we motion to table the approval of the minutes until we can get clarification on Madison's vote.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4-0 tabled. Okay, next up is informational reports with Dr. J.
Yeah, Madam President, member of the board and guests. Yeah, just a couple of things. Very excited to share. First of all, our letter grades came out for the state, and was very excited to see that Fountain Hills School District as a whole earned an A letter grade as a district, which is really amazing work that we have done collectively starting with our students, our teachers, our staff, and our parent community. So huge growth. Fountain Hills High School received an A for the 5th out of 6 cycles, and had some major growth in certain areas, including the College and Career Readiness Index, which was big for them. We also had Fountain Hills Middle School had the largest jump. They went up 20 points on their letter grade, from a 65 to an 85. They're out of 90 points, and special thanks to all the students, teachers, staff, and Dr. Wheeldryer and Val Reichler, who is here tonight, for their hard work in making that happen. They had massive growth. Almost all growth points were received for their letter grade, and then their proficiency rates were high enough to push them over the top. So we're really excited about that. McDowell Mountain got its first letter grade ever. They've never had a letter grade in the past because they were a K-3 school, and K-3 schools don't get letter grades. So we really had no baseline data, no idea where they're going to land. They came in at a B. They're a few points away from an A. I think if they couple little small changes with the baseline data they have, I'm very confident that Ms. Reichler will be able to move them over the top here in the next year or two. So, but overall, the district did receive an A, and that's just amazing work. So we will have the sites come for a recognition at some point soon, and each of the A-rated schools is going to also have an assembly where we're going to invite parents, community, and celebrate the hard work of our kids. So I'm very excited with the letter grades, and now we need to keep working hard to maintain them, because once you get there, it's now maintaining them is a little harder once you get there. So a couple other things. We had some great events this week at our schools, and we had, this is our fall program at Little Falcons Preschool. And it was just the other day, as a parent, I was there with my children doing these things, so it brings back a lot of memories. But they sang around 5 songs, maybe 6 songs, and they had a little, refreshments afterwards with the parents, and it was really cute to see. So really awesome job by our preschool staff. McDowell Mountain had their costume walk. They're celebrating the kids and bringing the community in, and Ms. Reichler had music playing and lots of parents out there, and it was a great event. We also had Red Ribbon Week, which we had, again, huge input from businesses, people in the community, and our principals, and the coalition did a great job of making that work. We're currently hosting our Sister Cities Exchange, and we have a short presentation on that coming up. This is the group here at the planetarium, at the Conti Planetarium, and we have 12 students from Zamość that are here, 3 teachers, and they were very, very much blown away by the planetarium. And the teachers had asked about how we made that work and costs, and I said, as long as the only other one's in Poland, we're good. Like, you guys can take that idea. But we watched a solar system video. They went on the playgrounds, and they got to visit with all of our schools in our elementary, so it was really great. I'm hosting 2 students at our home for the last week and into this week. One with my son Kale and one with my daughter Zoe. So we're very excited with that. And this is my group at the Music Instrument Museum. They're talented musicians, and they really wanted to see that. So we took them there and spent a few hours going through the MIM. So with that, I conclude my comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Dr. J? Hearing none, we'll move on to governing board reports. We'll start with Dr. Kowski.
Okay, thank you. So since our last meeting, a couple of things. I helped out at the middle school barbecue luncheon a couple of weeks ago. They entrusted me with the pork and beans. I think it turned out okay. And then the other thing we did at McDowell Mountain, I did Tar Wars, which is a tobacco and drug use prevention program that I've been doing since about 2006. So for the 5th graders, basically, to get them educated about the risks of that and hopefully learning to avoid such use. That's it.
Ms. Reed?
My kids and I helped out at the PBIS store, which is always a great time. And I'm going to make a plug because I won't be here this Friday or next week. So if anyone has time in their schedule, it's a great way to get to know our students and see the school and how our staff is working so hard to have things work well for our students. And it's really fun because the kids start to get to know you and recognize you. I was at soccer and a little boy came up and he's like, "Are you the lady that works at the PBIS store?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Because you look just like the lady that works at the PBIS store." So it's a really good way to connect with our students and our staff. And then this isn't really school related, but I went to the Boo Fest and saw our teachers there. And I love seeing our teachers involved in community events and just, and it's the same ones always, I think, Ms. Butler, Ms. Brooks, and Ms. Cooper that I see a lot at a lot of events, the soccer games, baseball games, and things like that. And I appreciate them so much for being out in the community so that parents and community members can get to know them. And then I was able to attend the Coffee with Kane online. My schedule's been really full, so I really appreciate the ability to attend online. And just, I loved several things from that, so I wanted to touch on those. I love that we have a parent university. I think that that's really great. I was going to ask, do we also offer resources to the parents that come to those classes? Is it like a connect them with?
Yeah, and Ms. Montgomery's here if you have any questions for her.
That's awesome. I was really excited to hear about that because I know that as, you know, a young mom myself, you're always learning. There's always something to learn. I loved the talk about nap time for our kindergartners. I think that that's really great. And the talk of bringing back advanced math at the elementary school, because I know some families that left because they were looking for challenges. So I love that we're bringing that conversation back. I also loved the conversation about the program for our high school students to connect them with community businesses, similar to, you called it like an Indeed for businesses. I thought that that was really neat, and I look forward to the discussion on that. And then I loved Red Ribbon Week, and I loved hearing that the coalition is working with Debbie Romano and Healthy Heartbeats. Those are both great community organizations, so I was very positive this week. Thank you.
Mrs. Acker?
Well, I attended just about all the coffees, so I like doing that and getting information from all the principals and from Kane. I agree, I concur, all the information that comes through is really good, and having a group of parents and community people there to give feedback is perfect. I went to see the Tar Wars that Dr. Rakowski did, and he did a fabulous job. I like the way he specified it, the lugs we saw there. No animal was killed for it, you know, and mentioned to the students they didn't smoke, it just looks that way, but, you know, it was great. I also served lunch for the coalition. I was there for middle school and high school. I had the last shift, which was the watermelon, and was very much appreciated. So I went to the McDowell Mountain Elementary for the leadership presentation, which was really fabulous, all the work the kids put in. It was too bad there was no time for them to present it, but it was a very shortened week with a lot of action-packed. I saw the Little Falcons fall program as well, which is fantastic. And then I did follow them to Fountain View Village, where they went, and instead of doing the program this year, they got to walk around all over, and the residents were sitting on 2 different floors, passing out candy, and just loved the kids being there, and the kids loved it too. So it was great. I was really impressed that the parents did drive them over. So it was afterwards, and I did see the walk at the elementary school with all the costumes, and it's great seeing so many parents out there watching everything. And so that's really impressive.
Thank you. I didn't attend anything, but I would like to congratulate all 3 schools and the staff that worked so hard to get those letter grades, because we've had last couple years have been really tough, and I know that our staff has put in a considerable amount of time and effort and professional development to earn those grades, and so congratulations to all of you. It is well deserved. I would also like to thank Ms. Reichler for inviting parents back into your school so much. I see a lot of things come out in the Falcon Focus, and you know, when my kids were little, being a classroom mom, it was a coveted position. Like, we would fight over it, and so I think we kind of lost some of that momentum, and so inviting parents back into the district will make a big difference on support and involvement in their kids' education. So congratulations on everything that you've done as a new principal, because that is going to make a big difference. Okay. All right, and next up will be reports. Do we have anyone here from Stugo?
I do not see anybody.
Okay, so we will skip Stugo. Next up will be the Sister Cities Club visiting students.
Yeah, so this will be a little specific tonight. We have the Jay Gazinski family. Come on up. and Olivia from Zamos. I intended to have a few more, but they decided to go to a rock concert tonight.
And rightfully so.
And who am I to tell them no?
No.
So it was really cool that they got to do that. So Olivia is a very talented student. She is in Poland. They call it grade 3, which would be a junior. And she has wonderful English, and she has been a lifesaver for us with making sure we can communicate with all students. And so what I thought I would do tonight, I just thought it was important for the board to see the decisions that you make and the impact that they have on the school. As someone who's participated in this for the first time, it has been such a wonderful experience for our family. And I'm gonna definitely miss these kids when they leave. So we have Wojciech, who is at the rock concert tonight. He is in grade 4 senior, and I believe he's the class president of his school. And he's staying with Kale, who's our sophomore, and Kale is at the rock concert with him. And then we have Olivia here with my daughter Zoe, and Tamara is here as well. So what I thought I would do is have each of them just give a quick perspective as a parent who hosts, as a student from Fountain Hills who is being a part of this, and then hear from Olivia about what she has gotten out of this. So Tamara, if you'd like to start first, and we'll go to Zoe and then Olivia.
First of all, thank you. It is my first time at a podium like this in Fountain Hills, so can you
He's
hear me
going to
okay?
turn on the mic for you.
Oh. Okay. First of all, again, thank you so much for having us and just taking a few minutes for us to be able to explain the experience that we've had. I was a little nervous about this, just it's a lot of my comfort zone, but I can tell you it has been such an incredible experience, one that I will remember for the rest of our life. I know just being able to provide them with the opportunity of a lifetime and to be able to be their host family, to offer experiences and just warmth and comfort in our house has been really great. I gotta be honest, I've seen my own children more in the last 2 weeks than I have in a while, so just to be able to spend time as a family, but to extend our family to these young students have been really incredible for our kids. It's been wonderful for them to see what teenagers are like around the world, and what we all know is that teenagers are teenagers and they all like the same things, even in Poland. So it's just been lovely and wonderful. And I think our own students have expanded their friendships just within Fountain Hills students and connecting with kids that they wouldn't normally connect with that are kind of outside of their friend circle. That has been really nice. And I haven't had the opportunity to meet all of the Polish kids to extent, but Olivia and Wojciech, the students that they're connected with at their high school, have spent a lot of time at our house. So it's been really great to just be able to open up our home for, I think we've had at least 8 teenagers over for dinner about 7 times in the last 2 weeks. So it's just been, it has been an absolutely incredible experience. And any family that is interested in doing this in the future, I would hope to reach out and we can talk about really just absolutely how wonderful it's been. So I'll let Zoe go next.
Sorry. It's actually been a really great experience, and I'm so glad I got the opportunity to be involved with this. I've made a very, very good friend, and I am so excited to go to Poland. It's really shown me like the similarities and differences across the world, and I'm very glad I got to experience it.
Yeah, so I'm like very grateful for the like opportunity to be here. Like it's probably my first time that I'm actually like outside of Europe, so that's been a like big trip. And I've met like a lot of friends. I've made some friends, and I also actually like kind of connected more with the friends from Poland actually. Like for example, like I knew like Wojtek from side, but I haven't really like met him really. So that was nice to connect with him also. And like yeah, the differences are really big for me, like here and in Poland. And I'm glad that Zoe's going to be able to like see them when she comes. It has been like really great, and we have seen a lot of places in here. We've been to like State Capitol, we've been to Phoenix, and yeah, I know that like many people are they are interested in different things. So for example, I really liked seeing seals in aquarium, And I know that Wojtek's really into like politics, so he was able to see like some governmental like district, I think, and he really liked that. And yeah, I'm just grateful that like my family is like so open, like my family here, and that they are like providing us really like good opportunities. So we've been to like basketball game, for example. I'm really glad. It was great, yeah. And Wojtek has been, like, and me also, we've been to, like, instrumental museum. So we got to see Roy Orbison's guitar. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, and I really enjoy being here.
So we went to a Suns game, and her brother's a big basketball fan, so she wanted to bring him home a gift. Real quick, favorite place you've been and favorite food?
Favorite place, I believe the stadium. Like,
Okay, the
yeah.
Suns Arena?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the food, the chocolate chip cookies that we made yesterday.
All right, thank you for coming. Thank you, Olivia.
Can I just say one more thing too? I know what a sacrifice it is for the teachers that have participated in this, and not only are they still planning for their classrooms, so Mr. Salzman, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Long, and all of the sister cities organizers as well for being able to do this. The schedule, I can't even imagine trying to put a schedule together for the kids and the adults and the teachers, and so I know what an effort that takes, so I just wanted to publicly thank them as well. So
Thank you all.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, we have to know what rock concert, though.
Queensryche.
Oh, that's a definite rock concert.
I can't wait to hear what they say when they get home about.
That's one from like my teens.
Yes.
So, all right, good to know they're still around. I think I'm too old to go, though. All right, site council minutes. Are there any questions or comments regarding site council minutes? Okay, I just have one comment, and I won't nitpick, but I'm just going to encourage all 3 schools to please read through your site council minutes, as you guys have some misspellings, including people's names. And I'm kind of a stickler on that.
Yeah, the name of the textbook also.
Yeah, so the grammar police would like you to read your site council minutes before you publish them in our packet. Thank you. Not picking, because it's all 3 schools, not just yours. Okay, next up is current enrollment. Are there any questions or comments regarding the current enrollment numbers? Looks like we're at 1103. Pretty fairly consistent. Not too much change between last month and this month. Student activity and auxiliary. At your seat, you had an updated page for the middle school that Mr. Rudolphi had found an error, so he printed it out with the correction.
Elementary.
Yeah, the elementary school. It looks like it was under the robotics that maybe. So.
In general, also, 900.
If I could, the error was in the beginning fund balances.
Oh, okay.
I made a simple, silly mistake in trying to copy the ending numbers from June to the beginning, and I messed up. So
Okay, got it.
the revenues, expenditures are correct for all the schools. It's just that I messed up on the elementary school beginning balances.
Okay, we'll allow that. I do have a question on, under the middle school and the high school, there are some negative numbers. Are those negative because there was no money in the auxiliary and it just got funded out of the balance, or like why does that show negative?
That is correct. And it is my intent to correct those before we produce the October reports.
Okay,
Well, I can't do it before October, it'll have to be before November,
Right.
so it'll still be there.
okay,
But yes, we will transfer money between the various courses, various funds, to make sure that there are no negatives.
okay, perfect, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Rudolphi. Next up is the unaudited financial report. Again, there's negative numbers there, sorry. Just because transfer over in the next report?
Some of them are because when we established the budget, you adopted the budget in early October. I've been gone for the month of October, just got back on Monday. So we need to move some of the budget funding around. The big one, obvious, is M&O, and the majority of it is due to the private placement students that the district had to provide funding for.
Okay. And same with impact aid, that's a pretty large number, but I know we took impact aid to pay for some other things, so.
Yes, and typically the deposits don't come until later in the year, so we have substantial encumbrances against that fund, but will be covered with future deposits.
Okay.
And we have submitted for reimbursement on a couple of outside placements, and we do believe we'll get it. It's just been a slow process. So Chris has been very diligent on that, and I do have some emails that are indicating that we should be receiving at least 2 reimbursements, which were the last 2 that you approved. Once I have those complete, I will give that information to you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the unaudited financial?
And the food, I assume is because we always spend it first and then get it back.
Correct. The reimbursements will be coming later.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are there any public comments? Did anyone want to make a public comment? I know Krista was not here. Okay, hearing none, we will move on. Next up are action items. The first one is the personnel action report. Are there any questions or comments regarding that?
I just had a question about the family engagement coordinator. How long have we had that stipend?
It's a new position. It's
Okay.
grant funded.
Okay.
So what we did is we created 2 positions, one at the elementary, one at the middle. We did interviews. We opened it up to all staff. And we have at the elementary, Ms. Cardello is going to be that person. She runs early birds care and helps at both Little Falcons and McDowell Mountain. And at the middle school, Erin Parrott will be the person who is in charge of that. And so they take from our kind of our fun committee that we created this year. So you brought up a lot of parents on campus, a lot of engagement. All part of our, that is our theme for the year, is getting parents back in, making school fun, highly engaging. So this committee creates ideas, and then these engagement coordinators take those and they make them come to life, and they're responsible for planning, supervising, working with Chris on funding and all those types of things. So the goal is 1 family engagement, at least 1 outside of class time family engagement event, kind of a big one for the month, and then several small events, possibly during the school day, like our 3-on-3 basketball tournament, which was very successful. Things like that we're doing to really, even grilling with Dr. J, right? That was a really good idea from Sodexo, and we put that together. Kids really enjoyed that lunch that day. So we're doing a lot of things like that, and that's what that position is. So it's grant funded.
That's wonderful, and I always love opportunities for teachers to get stipends, especially doing something like that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the personnel action report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
I also did quickly want to say that it's always sad to see someone retire, and I personally want to thank Rick Harris. Every time I've ever run into him on the school campus anywhere, he's always so friendly and always so happy, even though I know he's working a lot and he's probably ready to retire. But
Rick
yeah,
has
I've
been a
always appreciated
staple
him.
on these campuses since I can remember.
His wife too.
Okay. Next up are the payroll vouchers. Are there any questions or comments regarding the payroll vouchers? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the payroll vouchers.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay. Next up are the account payable vouchers. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a couple of
Go ahead.
questions. So on what's listed as page 41, page 51 in our packet, though, there's a couple of expenditures that just I'm kind of wondering what they were. One is for Howie's Hockey Incorporated for $1,086. I don't think we have a hockey team.
PE equipment is,
PE equipment,
yeah,
okay.
would be my, I'd have to double check, but that's the only thing that would, we don't have a hockey team, so
Yeah.
it would be PE equipment for floor hockey.
Okay, and then Richard W. Dobson, $2,600.
That's a staff
Yeah, so-
I
Oh, is
looked
it?
them up.
Okay.
He's the former maintenance director of the district for many years. We've hired him on as a consultant for, he works once every, I don't want to say every 2 weeks, just to help Juan with making sure that preventive maintenance is being done. And he's also doing all of our work with School Facility Board on reimbursements, and then also getting a couple of roof repairs done. We have one in K that is critical to be done, and I believe he's almost, him and Todd Harris are about ready to finalize that and construction on that K building, so he's doing that. Yeah.
Is that done as like 1099? He's just hired?
Yeah, he goes through HR, and we work through them to make sure that, yeah.
And then there's a couple on page 51, which is page 61 in our packet. Chapman Ford, $5,539.
Be the transportation department either ordering parts or having service done on something that Ray can't do.
Okay. And then the last one is Michelle Wilcox, $5,900 on that page.
That's sped, it's an IEP writing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Yep.
I had a couple.
Go ahead.
The 9,000 Bel Air
9,000
on
Bell.
page 41,
Can you,
on 926.
okay, so hold on.
I think there was another
Here,
one.
Bel Air, it's actually 3 invoices for 2,064, 1,428, and 6,470. It was for the middle school, high school drinking fountain, August maintenance, and rooftop repair at Little Falcon Preschool.
August maintenance is,
I think
it's
it's
like, just like a
So,
monthly
yeah.
type thing? Okay, and so that would be something that would probably change if we did a contract? 'Cause that would be-
So they're on a contract for, they have a
Wasn't that
contract.
Philip was from Bel Air, right?
Right,
Did
he
you say
was.
we weren't currently on a contract?
We're on a contract at the high school.
Okay.
We need to, which is the high school and middle school. And so we need to look at one for McDowell Mountain. And to answer your question, Dr. Akowski, the Howie's hockey is actually Howie's athletic tape. And so it's different kinds of athletic tapes and plastic wrap.
So
Okay.
for the
So
trainer.
for the training room.
Okay.
Yep,
Got
it
it.
says
Thank you.
athletic training supplies.
Thank you.
Okay?
And then the other one was the To Teach Global LLC, $5,000.
What,
And that's on page,
tell me what the,
like a voucher number?
yeah, what the.
2016.
You know what, my thing just closed.
And the new one.
$2016, you said?
Mhm.
Hold on, I'll tell you. And what's it called?
To Teach Global.
Oh, To Teach
LLC.
Global. Perfect, that's the first one.
Number 2.
So that is, it's personal development. It's a Dr. Karj conducted a full day of training in Inclusive Practices 101.
I was at the middle school with Dr. Wheeldryer,
Right.
has been working, and at the elementary school on special ed training and co-teaching and things like that.
Okay. And then educational services, I know I had looked up before, is that who does website services, or is
No.
that like a?
That's ESI, that
Oh,
we
okay,
do the
that's
contracted employees.
outsourced,
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
staffing, okay.
Yeah.
Because, okay. That would make
Yeah,
sense.
so that's all the teachers that are on that, the
Okay.
ESI contracts that we approved, like Mrs. Matus, Dr. McGowan.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, that's it for.
Okay. There are a couple other ones that I wrote down. I would like some clarification. So Krista, can you please, when you get back, get us clarification on Blue Sky Pest Control and why we pay so much for pest control? And then also, just for the board's information, there's a very large Amazon bill for $13,000, but that's 21 different POs that are all under that amount. So just so the board is aware that we did not spend a lump, like one total of $13,000 at Amazon. But there's a lot of, and most of them are auto parts for the fleet that it looks like transportation orders, different kinds of O-rings and car stuff from there. So,
The Blue Sky Pest Control, is this an annual payment or is this?
I don't
a
know,
payment?
that's what I would like
Okay.
clarification on, so, because that's
Yeah.
some serious pest control. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Do you happen to know that, Dr. J?
I would have to clarify with Juan on how frequent the cost is. I do know that we have lots of wildlife in our community and schools.
And it did say rodent control.
So it's not only that, but I'm sure that also includes snakes and things that are attracted to those animals. So being not only in a desert, but then the high school and elementary are both situated in desert landscaping on top of that. I'm sure that's it. I can get clarification on how often that payment is, though.
Yeah, I would like to know that. So, I mean, it's a done deal now, they've already performed the service, but I would like to know what the
Sure.
deal is with it, so. Okay, are there any other questions regarding the accounts payable vouchers? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move that we approve. Sorry, I'll move that we approve the accounts payables.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Okay, so 3-1. Okay, next up are the donations. Again, I'd just like to thank everyone that donates to the schools. Some are cash donations, some are just in-kind donations, but it all makes a difference. Are there any questions or comments regarding the donations?
I just want to note that they're decent donations, like the projection screens and projectors. That's awesome. I love when we see stuff like that come through for our students, because people could, look to resell or look to, get something for it, but instead they just donate it to our students for them to use, and I really appreciate that.
And a lot of items for the Second Chance store at the middle school, and I just know that Steph is over the moon with as many donations that she gets, and the kids are just loving it, so. Okay. No other questions or comments? Okay, I motion that we approve the donations as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next up are policies advisories 801 to 807. This also includes the regulation with the updated language that Dr. Rakowski had pointed out regarding physician and/or duly licensed healthcare provider, appropriately licensed physician and/or healthcare provider. Are there any questions or comments regarding the policies or regulation update?
There's some additional stuff there that I don't think was either caught or corrected, so I can point those out. It's on page 116 of our packet, I think. Let's get to that. Almost there. Yeah, page 116 of the packet, and this would be under paragraph 2. The highlighted portion there, a physician and/or duly licensed healthcare provider. The phrase "or nurse practitioner" should not be there because that's redundant.
Okay.
A nurse practitioner is duly licensed healthcare provider. That's one. And then on page, let's see, the one that's marked 110, which is page 120 of our packet. Near the bottom, the district, the subsection A, the phrase "or registered nurse practitioner" should be eliminated, because that's, again, redundant, and nurse practitioners aren't registered, they're licensed, so it's not accurate. So eliminating the words "or registered nurse practitioner." And that should make it good.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments regarding policies 801 to 807 and regulation JLCDR?
No, but thank you, Dr. Rakowski, for rewriting that.
You're welcome.
Okay, hearing no other questions or comments, I move that we approve policy advisories 801 to 807 and regulation JLCDR with the changes in JLCDR of removing nurse practitioner or registered nurse practitioner wherever it may be.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Okay, next up is the ASBA bylaw change proposal consideration. Are there any questions or comments regarding the bylaws for ASBA?
No, my only question is going to be, who will submit this?
Well, that's what we have to, that's what we're voting on.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's to give direction to vote on our behalf.
Right, no, I'm saying, is it Krista or,
Whoever gets nominated will.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, well, I would nominate Lillian because she has been most involved with ASBA.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second for Lillian to vote on behalf of Fountain Hills Unified School District in the manner of board approval. Are there any, anybody, oh, goodness. Let me restart that.
Any objections?
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so 3-1. Next up is the intergovernmental agreement with the Educational Enterprise Resource Planning. Again, this is for the vision software through the county superintendent's office to submit our financing. Are there any questions or comments regarding the vision software and the IGA? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the intergovernmental agreement with Maricopa County.
I second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm actually abstaining from this one.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's a 3-0-1. Okay, next up is election of the officer. I waited all year for us to get a 5th board member, which never happened. So I've kind of been on my own with making the agendas and having no backup. So I think it's really important that the board put forward a vice president for the next 2 meetings. That way someone can learn how to do the agendas as my term will expire, and at this point we will have no one who's ever done this. So I am going to nominate Dr. Rakowski as vice president. Are there any other nominations?
I would like to nominate myself.
Okay, so there's one nomination for Dr. Rakowski and one for Ms. Acker. So Dr. Rakowski's was made first, so all in favor of Dr. Rakowski being the vice president, say aye. So I'm an aye, so that's 1. Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
And I have 1 abstention.
I'm abstaining as well.
I guess I'll say nay.
Okay. Okay, and then the next vote would be for Ms. Acker. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm a no because I already, and then
I'm abstaining.
2 abstentions. So unfortunately, then you still have no vice president, so.
Well, the first meeting in January is an organizational meeting, which I do understand wanting someone to have maybe done it before, but luckily Krista has done it before, and
I understand, there's just a lot of work that still goes into it on my part, and none of you have any experience. So
Well-
I just wanted someone to have experience.
I understand, but in the end, we as a board, at some point, because it wasn't me, but it was decided that the vice president or the president is the one that decides the agenda, because it doesn't have to be that way. So we could all have experience in it, but we decided, like I said, at some point, for it just to be the president.
Yeah, that's how policy was written when I came on the board. You know, I hate to go.
How will we begin the first meeting where we have to, somebody has to be
Yeah, that's my
in charge?
question too. So
Right.
how would the first meeting be conducted?
So,
Who would know what-
Policy basically states that it says, whenever there's a vacancy in the office of the president, the board shall elect a new officer to fill the vacancy during the unexpired term of office. Let's see here. The meeting shall be called to order by president or vice president of the board from the preceding year. If that person is not a member of the board, a temporary president shall be elected, and the meeting shall be called to order by a temporary president. The person calling the meeting to order shall preside until a successor is chosen.
So the first thing we would do is
Is
elect
nom-
a temporary
Right.
president, and that person would probably be the president.
But unfortunately, none of us will know what we need to be doing.
Well, I tried,
Can,
so.
am I allowed to change my vote? Or
In the end, I
make a
think
motion
it's-
again?
You can do next meeting.
Yeah,
We try
Next
to-
I'll
meeting?
bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay.
So, okay. All right, so then that moves on to the information discussion items. So we are going to start with climate tech, so come on up.
Is it possible to plug this in so
Yep.
you guys can get a visual of
Sure.
the system?
There's a
Might be-
HTML.
We've toured the system, so.
Oh, you have, so, okay,
We have,
cool.
but you could still plug it in so the audience can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we don't know what we were looking at.
okay, gotcha.
There you go.
So I'm Corey with Climate Tech. This is Ryan. He's been your guys' TSA tech for the better part of 10
Explain
years.
the TSA tech.
Technical service agreement. So what we do is we take care of your guys' HVAC system from a control standpoint. Obviously, Bel Air takes care of it from a mechanical. We're kind of the smarts behind it to make it all work. I don't know if you want me to get into like complete detail of what we do. I'm gonna let Ryan do that because he's the professional on it.
Give us in layman's terms what,
Yeah.
like, why we would need you and not just Bel Air.
Gotcha.
So the biggest thing is Bel Air is not a controls company, so they do all the mechanical side of it. Plus, they're not a rep on your guys' product that you guys have here. So you guys have Allerton product, which is Honeywell, they're owned by Honeywell themselves. What we do is we network all the air conditioning equipment together, and of course, what you guys are seeing here is your central plant to your high school. So it's on a larger scale, you know, it's completely different than, say, at home, where you guys have your air conditioner and your little smart thermostat, where you can Wi-Fi in. All this stuff has logic behind it that's written. A lot of the stuff, because I've been out here forever, I think I've been through 5 or 6 superintendents that have been down here. I don't know, long time. I'm really sad that Rick's retiring, because he has a lot of knowledge on this, so I feel like, and it's okay. I mean, we're here to support you guys, to support Juan. I've already talked to him a lot. I also do the customer operator training for the product. So Juan's going to be taking the class at our office, and I'm going to be his instructor, and one of his other guys is coming, I think, and then I think JC is going to be coming to one of the other classes. So I'm here also to support them, help them understand the system, because it is so complex. You guys here at this site have a thermal storage tank, and what that is you guys chill water and you store it in a tank, so when the energy cost is high, you pull out of the tank instead of running the chillers. So right now we are in shoulder time. I don't know if you guys can see the winter summer little tag that's on the left side of the screen off towards the corner. November 1st is when you guys switched over to your winter mode. And that's all based off of SRP's time of day rating. And so some of the stuff, I take ownership when it's my customer. You guys are my customer. So I take ownership on your system when it comes to that side. So even though I wasn't here Friday, I had a note in my phone to tell me I needed a remote in and change your system over. So it's not costing you guys the high KW usage. So, but there's a lot of other things behind the scene that is really hard to explain to you guys unless you really knew how the control stuff goes together. But really that, in a nutshell, we're here to make sure that your system is functioning, make sure that we're there to assist Bel Air. Bel Air assists us on the mechanical side, and then also to make sure that we're saving energy on your guys' schools. Just to explain a little bit, like this school is a chilled water school. McDowell Mountain is a water source AC unit school. That's why you guys have a cooling tower, like these two cooling towers you guys see on the screen here, which I can actually show you guys that one.
So a big part of what he does too is from an energy standpoint. A lot of the equipment, if it wasn't maintained properly, from a control standpoint, your guys' energy bills would be through the roof. So Ryan, he also, there's other parts of it too, not just from an HVAC standpoint. We control all the outside lighting and stuff on all the buildings, and it's not just the high school, obviously. We do all three of your guys' schools. So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And plus, kind of, Four Peaks, you guys kind of have, Four Peaks kind of dormant. We don't have network connection there, but I can plug in physically on that site to make changes. And when you guys have stuff that needs to get changed over there at that site. But again, just to explain a little bit different, each site is unique in its own. There's a chill water site, that's why you have the chillers and the chiller plant with the thermal storage tank and cooling towers. McDowell Mountain has a water source AC unit system, which is kind of funky. That's the only site I've ever seen that's a water source AC unit system. Usually they're water source heat pumps. That one has electric heat in all those units over there. But you have condensed water that is flowing through those towers, and that's what pulls the heat out of those air conditioning units. And then over at Little Falcon, that is an actual water source heat pump site, which is common a lot of areas. And so just like your heat pump at home reverses its cooling and heating. So when you go outside, if it's in heating mode, then you're going to feel cold air coming off of your condensing unit, and then vice versa in the summertime, you're feeling the heat come off of it. Instead of having the condensing unit like you guys have at home, that's basically air's releasing that heat, you're using another cooling tower over there at Little Falcon that does the same thing. So they're very complex when it comes to their maintenance and stuff. I also take care of your guys' server, so right now I'm remoted into the server for your energy management system, so I make sure it's always patched. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that whole story with Target, when somebody broke in through their energy management system, and it was the system that monitored all their coolers, and for some reason it was on the same network with all the financials, and they got a lot of people's information. So I always make sure that you guys have the latest rev or revision or firmware in your devices. So that's another big thing, is the security end of it, which is hand in hand with IT. But again, this is a certain niche in that market. So that's another reason why we're contracted with you guys.
So you handle all the AC heating units, and you said the lighting. Is there anything else you handle on our campuses?
We used to do your fire system, but for some reason John released us from that, and now you guys have a different company that does that. So, but we do fire and security and card reader access.
And obviously we're on a contract with you. Is it a set amount contract that we pay you like monthly, or is it like a per occurrence? Like how does that work?
So the contract that you guys have with us is an annual contract. And it's broken up into quarterly payments with you guys. It is what it's been for a long time. So it's a yearly contract.
The reason that we're
we're having this discussion is because between you and Bel Air Mechanic, it seems like we're seeing a lot of charges. So are we incurring additional charges with you guys? for
Not
other
from us.
services? So it's all the mechanical side?
Yo, so like a couple things. So you guys get me out here, I come out 3 times a month. So
And that's part of the agreement?
that's part of the agreement, yeah. Again, like I was saying, I do take ownership of every site that I take care of, because I take care of Gilbert Schools, Florence School District, ASU, the East Campus, are all my service agreement customers that I go out to. And a part of that, so a lot of the stuff too, if there's something that I see that could be improved or is going to help save energy, if it's something that I can do that doesn't cost you extra money, like maybe adjusting programming or adding some programming stuff, then I do that during the time that I'm here. If it's something beyond that, that's when we would then have, a project with you guys, and then somebody would sell you, that project for whatever it might be. But another thing too is like, so Bel Air over at McDowell Mountain, not to bring up your guys' pest control, but roof rats ate through some control wires over there. So right now I have 2 units that are running, but I can't see them. And so Juan was getting pest control to get rid of those guys. And it's not just a Fountain Hills thing. I've had that happen at ASU Poly, and Scottsdale School District used to be one of my customers. But during my time, if I have time, I will fix the wiring in those things. That's not an extra charge to you guys because I'm already here, and that's something, I have stuff on my truck to do that stuff. So
I think where she was going with that is a lot of our stuff is inclusive to that agreement, right? You don't get a bunch of extra bills for Ryan's time when he gets a phone call on the weekend that, hey, our chiller's down, what do we do? Ryan and Rick had a really good relationship where Ryan would drop what he's doing, whether he's out of town in California on vacation, and literally get online and help Rick through his issues. So Bel Air's a little bit different, I think, because they're replacing actual mechanical components, maybe a motor or a pump or something along those lines. So I would assume that they're probably sending a bill for that kind of stuff.
and two, like if you guys have an emergency, of course, like I showed up that one day when Kane was in the plant, and it wasn't a controls issue, but Rick was panicking. The plant was down. Bel Air needed to fix what was broken in there, and again, this plant is so particular on how to get it to start back up, and because if it gets airlocked, then it takes forever to bring it back up. But we got it back up.
Yep.
I was coming down from Flagstaff from another customer, and I just traded my day, so it wasn't an extra cost to you guys. That was something that I would do with Rick. If he had an emergency, I would come out, trade the day out. So, I still got paid for my time. It's just instead of me coming out whatever day it was, now it became that day. Kind of thing, so.
Can you give me an update, the McQuay system, is that on, are we on Climate Tech or are we waiting on Bel Air on that one?
You're waiting on Bel Air. So the Daikin chiller or the McQuay chiller has mechanical parts they've been waiting on. And that's another thing too. I see a lot. I use my background's HVAC. That's what I went to school for originally. I actually used to be the facility supervisor for East Valley Institute of Technology for 9 out of 14 years of being there. So that's how I got introduced to controls back in the day. And but no, that's a mechanical issue that's going on with there.
And they've said that, like, when they were here last meeting, the parts have been ordered.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do but wait, correct?
Yes.
I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
because it's scary,
It is.
you got one system working, one system down, they're supposed to, feed off each other, go back and forth, so.
The nice thing, or I should say now that we're in winter time,
Yeah, it helps.
the nice thing you have at this site is you have what they call a flat plate heat exchanger. So, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but
Yeah.
this guy right here is a flat plate heat exchanger. And what he does is when the outside air conditions are able to transfer enough heat to cool the campus, we're basically running just one cooling tower with a pump flowing water through one side of the plates on that heat exchanger. And then your house pump, which is running right now because he runs 24/7, he's the inside loop that feeds all your guys' fan coils. And that's how we transfer heat without running a chiller. So, and that's all based off of outside enthalpy, and that's just the evaporation rate of what we got. So, right now, I'd have to look at the trend logs, but we probably only ran the chiller just a minimal now that it's starting to get really cold.
So it's a good time to be on back order.
Yes, yeah. And that's another thing too, like, with Juan, I know he's really new at a lot of this stuff. And because I have been in facilities and all that, I've been trying to help him out a little bit too on that. And, because a lot of this equipment too has to be maintained, like the cooling towers need to have chemical in them. So that's a whole nother contract, right? They have to be cleaned at least once a year, or they should be cleaned at least once a year. Because they're just big, huge air washers. So, we live in a dusty area, those things suck dust in them, and then you lose your efficiency if they're never cleaned.
And that goes back to Rich Dobson. Okay, so Rich being a long time, in Juan's role he was here when we built the current McDowell Mountain. He's aware of these types of things that should be happening, and he's helping Juan with, papers and deadlines and scheduling so that we have that consistency that we need there. So that's one of the reasons he's there, is to help with that change of kind of changing from John being here for so long and now Juan being new, that we had some consistency.
I have some questions. So I do have, for this fiscal year, I have everything that we paid you, and kind of what's still outstanding. So it looks like we do have one, system service parts and programming contract with you, but there's also a charge for Allerton parts for all district buildings. What would that be?
So
It's a separate charge.
did he just put it in? Because it's for wall sensors.
This was July 28th of 24.
I didn't write anything up.
For $2,535.
Can I look, can I see that? I'm just curious if it shows like a line item.
It's like a PO list.
Okay. I don't know what that's for, but I can, and that's over and above the service contract?
Right, this is the service contract
Okay.
here at $60,000, which I showed that we paid you 2 payments out of that $60,000, so we're halfway through that.
Okay.
But this was a separate charge in July for $2,535 that just says Allerton parts for all district buildings, so I'd like clarification on that.
Yeah, I can get you that.
And then a monitoring agreement of $1,800. Why is that different?
It might have been fire. Because fire's monitoring.
But you're not on our fire anymore.
But we
We're not.
just switched recently.
Yeah.
I would say, I think the final switch came with the replacement at Little Falcons preschools. Remember, we had the fire panel replaced by the school facility board. I can get you that information of when we made that switch. I know John was working on that down the stretch when he was getting ready to retire. And I know that the fire panel was replaced at the end of last year, or probably over the summer at Little Falcons. And I believe the company that we did that with is who he ended up going with.
Yeah, neither one of them have been paid, they're just both encumbered.
Okay.
And then climate tech training, $2,100, is that for you to come out and for Juan to take the class and?
It's probably for the
JC?
class, yeah.
Okay, and that's understandable, and again, that hasn't been paid, it's just an encumbered.
I'll find out about the Allerton parts. It sounds like where were you saying wall sensors?
It could have been fire stuff too. I don't know.
I'll get with our service people and ask them.
Yeah, and you're welcome to take this with you.
Can I? Yeah, that would be
I have
great.
it on my computer, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, when these are kind of for Kane, when we see the charges for taking of those parts for our air conditioning gauge.
Probably parts and repairs.
Yeah.
That'd be
For Daikin, is
yeah.
that what you said?
Because that's the chiller that's down right now.
Okay, and we're waiting on parts from them.
And Bel Air talked about that at the last meeting.
Yes, I remember. Okay, because there was just one on 10/24, and I was wondering if that was for the part, or is that for services?
It's probably for both. I know the parts, I'd have to see which PO is for the parts and which one's for the service, but we've had multiple issues with this system this year. We've had to send kids home, and, we know that, so,
How much was that for? Is it in this packet?
Yeah, it's on about 2019.
Oh, so 2271?
No, for 3,600. There was a Bel Air for 2002.
Oh, are you talking about climate?
No, the Daikin, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if it's, I would, again, I'll have to check, but I would say if it's a purchase order to them, then it would be parts. If it's for service, it would be to Bel Air.
And I think, I mean, and I don't know for sure, but I think prior, when John was running the show, they had Daikin as the service company for servicing the chillers.
So we were working with Bel Air, I think we were still
Bel,
sometimes, but.
Well, we do have a
Yeah.
service at the high school with Bel Air
But we were
currently.
paying Dayton directly.
you had, yeah, because Daikin was, it's its own company, and so, and since that's the one thing, your guys' Daikin chillers is they call it a frictionless chiller, so it has no bearings in it. It basically spins in a magnetic field for the compressor. So that chiller is kind of a really sensitive chiller, I guess. So that's probably why he used Daikin directly for that chiller. Now, Bel Air does have their own chiller mechanics, and they do have their own, trained mechanics, I should say. But if it's something specific, like a firmware update in that chiller, they wouldn't have access to that. Just like the other chillers, a York chiller, they wouldn't have access to the firmware update. To
Yeah,
that.
a lot of it's proprietary
That would-
to the manufacturer.
Daikin wouldn't have access to it.
Yeah, so like your York chiller, it would be JCI, which is Johnson Controls, would be the ones if there was something inside that chiller that needed a certified.
So then we would be
Tech.
working with them and paying them directly if it was something like that proprietary.
Yeah, or
Okay.
Bel Air would be the in-between person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you guys talk to and work with Bel Air to figure out the problems?
A lot of times we'll have, well, in our line of business, it's usually mechanical pointing to us, it's a control issue. It's just, something that we deal with on it.
We do work hand in hand,
But,
but they need us to turn
But
stuff.
usually we do our troubleshooting and we'll tell them, and again, I have a air conditioning background, HVAC, so I kind of go above and beyond my, where my controls end. And this wasn't a Bel Air, this was a different mechanical, but a little while back, you guys, well, I should say years back now, over at Old McDowell Mountain, you had there's a heat pump, package heat pump that sits on the roof of the kitchen. And I don't want to name the mechanical company, but they kept telling Gary, when Gary was the guy that worked there, that it was a controls issue. And I'm like, it's not me. If we have 24 volts coming out of our controller to your unit should be running. If it's not running, it's something internal in that unit holding it out. So I troubleshot it all the way down to it was a high pressure switch that was bad, which is a mechanical side of it. But we work hand in hand. I mean, there are stuff that they're going to need to ask us to look into and vice versa. So it's kind of a hand in hand thing,
Are there any notifications on the control side for things like dirty filters? Because one of our things said that the filters were so dirty there was no air movement. Is there any kind of?
There is
flag for you?
a time, it runs off of runtime of the fan. They are on there, whether the guys use it or not, that's, but it is in the system.
In the system for who?
For, people like Juan, Rick, any of the operators. Yeah.
So is changing filters a district?
That would be a district thing, yeah. And you do get alarms too. Juan's getting them now that Rick's gone, for your walk-ins. So the walk-in refrigerators and freezers have temperature sensors that are monitored on here. And so if they go outside of their range, they let Juan know. I think Juan's the only one on it at the moment, but it would text and email him that there's an issue.
And would it also trigger a notification if it sensed maybe a leak, if the door or something was not sealing correctly?
No, I mean, we could put a door sensor on it and then be able to sense the door and be able to tell if it was open. But right now, it's just a temperature sensor probe that's in there.
So if the door was propped open
It
or
would
whatever,
just keep
you
it
would,
running.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, it would keep it running, but if the temperature dropped because the door was open, you would know that there's an issue with the freezers or refrigerators.
Yeah.
Like at home when it starts beeping because you left the door open.
Yeah, right. I mean, you guys have a lot of alarms in here. I mean, all your major pumps that run, like here at this central plant, all these pumps will send an alarm to Juan. The chillers will send alarm, the fans will send alarm. So Any critical items do send out alarm to the guys so they know something's up.
So it goes to our guys, not?
It goes to your guys,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I
And then
wish-
they probably call me at that point.
I wish we could have had you here with Bel Air, because then there can't be it's a mechanical versus it's a control
Yeah,
issue.
yeah.
Because I guess my last question is, I know there's definitely mechanical things that need to be fixed to
Mhm.
help with our costs. You know, we have older equipment and things that need to be repaired.
Mhm.
But is there things from the control standpoint that we could be doing to lower our costs?
At this point, it's, the majority of it is, failed equipment, mechanical equipment. You guys have the latest software in here. You have a brand-new energy management server that John had purchased in the middle of maybe it was the beginning of the summer is when we got that server put in there. There are items that, just like a cell phone, you get a new hardware, a new phone comes out. It's the same thing in controls. There is newer hardware that does come out that will help assist in energy savings. And then like the firmwares and stuff being up to date, that does help too on some of that side of it.
But is it really
but-
worth it until we?
But at this point, being your service guy, I would say at this point, on your control side, you guys are solid with your
So
control
until we
system.
really upgrade our AC units, there's not a lot.
Yeah,
of
so
control.
you guys did a major upgrade on controls at the high school, this is probably like 8 years ago, from a
I think we
old
did the
proprietary
farm.
system, yeah. So the controls that you have in the system right now are still up to date.
They're not IBEX, right? It's all VLCs.
Yeah, it's all backed up.
So it's the
And then,
latest.
last question, when was the last time you negotiated a contract with these guys?
It would've been the beginning of
This year.
school
Okay,
Yeah.
so is it a yearly thing?
It's
or
a
just
yearly.
one-year contract every time?
Yep.
Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you so much for coming
You're
out,
welcome.
guys. We
Sorry
really
it took
appreciate
this long to get out here.
That's okay.
What were your names again?
I'm Ryan Trollinger.
Ryan?
And I'm Corey Clark.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Next up is the fifth grade trip to Grand Canyon.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the board and guests, we have our fifth grade teachers here and Ms. Reichler to talk about, as part of our goal to make our schools more engaging and traditions and things that we think will help keep students excited about the next grade level, the next opportunity. We've encouraged at the end of fifth grade and the end of eighth grade doing some kind of trip. So you've heard from eighth grade, and now today you're going to hear from fifth grade.
That was a tough act to follow.
You'll be great.
Okay. Okay, who's up? Okay, so I'm going to follow with what Dr. J said. We came up here, I think, what was that, April, May, at one point, and they put together a trip to Catalina. Didn't pan out so well. There was a lot of confusion on all parts. I wasn't getting phone calls back by the time I intervened. And so we said, you know what? Let's scrap it. Let's do a do-over. But we still need something to keep kids excited about school. So I said, ladies, let's get going. So we all started Googling on this and trying to find trips that would be, appropriate for fifth graders. One that, I understand last time there were some people that didn't agree with 3 nights out of state. So we said, what could we do better? So we did that. So I'm going to let you guys go ahead.
Remind us of your names, please.
I'm Jessamine Coswaldo.
Stacy Morgan.
So, big thing we're going back is we moved up with this group of students, and so this will be our second year with them. And so it's really exciting for us to have this end of the year trip to really we've built a fantastic community with them, with both the parents and the students, and we want to end it on just an exciting adventure before they move up to sixth grade. I know between Dr. J, Ms. Reichler, we've talked a lot about bringing in that end of the year for fifth grade too, and we want to build that tradition so it continues after this group. these students, we've had them for 2 years. We've seen them grow. We've seen them do amazing things. So we want to give them that reward. They're really excited. They want an opportunity to go on a trip. We have a lot of things kind of under that discussion between for the behavior. We'd like to put together kind of a group of parents with administration with us so everyone is on the same page of what's to be expected before we go, how you are able to meet those expectations following the Falcon Way. And so the students know those going in before we go on this trip.
So I'm going to go in on that, is that going through trips, watching Luke Salzman put together his parents, put together meetings, they were monthly or bi-monthly, whatever they were. I said, you know what, we're going to go that route because it really worked. I had a great experience when I was sending Ariel on her senior trip, and so I said, follow those ways. So we went back and are taking a look now. It's going to work. Let's tell them about the trip.
So this is a one night, just overnight, starting early in the morning. There's quite a few different activities. The main ones are going to be going to Arizona, going to see NAU, which is exciting. I know a lot of us are familiar with it. And we'll talk about the hotel in a moment. Lowell Observatory, today we spent the whole day learning about constellations. We're learning about space all right now in our 5th grade standards.
Moon
So
phases.
this is a fantastic opportunity to really, for them to go a little bit deeper. We have our planetarium, I know, at the elementary school, but just, it's a little different too. There's some more telescopes, some different things to see. Go overnight, and then you have most of the day at the Grand Canyon, doing some different outdoor walks, doing some different talks, learning about what's going on, which is something that we have covered in 4th grade, covering later on in 5th grade. So there's a huge relation to standards, and we'd like to tie in some journals, some photo memories, whatever we can, just to kind of end that year with those memories so they have something to take with them also.
So our tentative dates are May 1st and 2nd, which is, helps. Yes, after testing, so it's not conflicting like the Catalina trip did. So it's a nice end of year wrap up, but the 2 days are subject to change because they're not necessarily holding our spot right now since we haven't given them a contract or money. So it might go 2 weeks either direction. And also the itinerary. So they might reorder things depending on what the parks are able to fit us in. So it's not exactly set in stone. The places are, but not the order of the places. So the pricing is $375 per person based on 38 kids on a bus, or people, including chaperones. So we would probably expect 2 buses. Included in the cost is the charter bus. So we don't have to worry about the district getting us up there. They'll come and pick us up and drop us off. There are instructors and guides on the buses that will talk to them along the route, what they're expected to see and the expectations when they get there, what they'll be doing. When they get there, the parks, like Grand Canyon, has their own guides, so they have stricter guidelines. There's a 1-to-5 ratio, 1 adult to the 5 kids, because it's the Grand Canyon. So we have to follow the park rules. And so we're going to be a little bit more safe. It covers the admission to the venues we go to, the hotel night, and the night security at the hotel, as well as some of the meals. I think a couple of them say that they would get bring a sack lunch, or we're going to stop at Subway or something. So there's a couple of those in there. Again, we plan to have a teacher, admin, parent committee to help us with the ideas for fundraising. As soon as we get the okay, we're going to take off with that and get some parents. We already have the survey of who wants to maybe help us and be involved in that. For safety, as I said, that it's a national park rule, so we're not going to change that. At Bright Angel, they're going to be walking up to the wall. Again, all the safety precautions. No one's allowed to sit, touch, lean over. So we'll do our best to keep all the kids safe and back on the bus. The hotel safety, I don't know if you all remember going to summer camp and these chaperones or the security put the tape over the door on the outside. That is what they do. So they will help them check in, do the check-in process. They pre-check the rooms, make sure they put the TV remote somewhere safe so that no one's charged for that. They give them the rules, the lights out, and then they're monitoring. So there's a male and a female that are paid for. That'll be up and down the halls, as well as our own, district and parent chaperones that would be placed between rooms. And there's 4 kids per room, and any chaperone or adult that wants to go can purchase their own single room and doesn't have to room with another adult.
So we sent out a survey a couple weeks ago once we found this trip. So as of right now, we have only received 30 responses, but you can see we've got about 86% that are okay with this. Based on the survey we sent for Catalina, we had about 54 responses, and it had very similar percentages. It was around the 85%, I think, was a little lower.
That's almost half of the group responding.
I mean, 30.
The 30 as of right now is about half, yes. So we gave them a couple just options here that they could choose. The blue, no, but I would send my student if fundraising covered the cost. The red, yes, I would cover the full amount if necessary. Yellow, yes, I would cover part of the amount if it is not covered by fundraising. So we've got most of them, they'll at least be able to pay. We'll try to get as much covered with fundraising, and we have some good ideas.
Tax
and parent
credits.
development. Yeah.
How does this per person or per student price compare to the Catalina one? I don't remember what the Catalina one is.
About,
It's cheaper or more?
it's about the same. There's like a $10 difference.
But we had to pay for the buses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
a little bit cheaper than Catalina. So this is the timeline. You've got the 12 weeks prior. The organization is going to send down a representative so they can give a presentation, go into a little bit more details, answer any additional questions that the parents have. That's much better than conveying it to us and be the messengers, so they can do that. And then also just talk with us. We can add any additional activities, what kind of conversations, presentations that are going on the bus. That way we can just kind of plan ahead too. And I know that there's a lot of families that would be much more comfortable having this communication directly from them. 8 weeks, just to give those kind of final numbers. 6 weeks is prior that final payment deadline.
That's us, like, proving that we can, like, having the PO. So we can go all the way up to like March before we're giving them hard numbers and having to make sure all the funds are there, because they don't collect the final payment until, this is called project exploration. They don't collect the final payment until after the trip. And so that makes it nice. They have all sorts of waivers for their allergy forms and, dietary forms, so we'll be provided all of that stuff, like it says, five weeks prior. And then 4 weeks, we need to have that purchase order. That's it, that's the end.
And a lot of our parents, being younger parents, they need to be educated about our tax credits. Some of them have no idea. So, I got most of Ariel's trips, Jared's trips paid for with the tax
Just get
credits.
one tax credit.
Yeah, so we'll be able to inform them when we meet with them.
And we could put out, I shared with Ms. Reichler that Falcon Family Feast is a very good time to
Yes.
put tax credit forms out.
Yeah.
And so
Welcome.
she's
Here you
gonna
go.
be handing those out
Here you go.
throughout the day. But you get one community member to do their tax credit for field trips or for specifically this. We get a lot of just random generals, a lot of, just even got some for the planetarium this year, even though we didn't ask. So I think being under one tax credit makes it a lot more doable price-wise for the kids.
You talked about forms that Phil provided you with the allergy and stuff. The board has a whole packet that we request. So when you bring this to the board for approval, you need to make sure you have all those forms or it will be denied. So Luke Salzman is really great about that. So I would pick his brain because he's really good at putting his packet together to make sure that all the forms are included for the board.
Okay.
I love this idea. I'll just be honest, I was a naysayer when it came to Catalina. I would not have approved Catalina because it concerned me to take, 10, 11-year-olds out of state across the ocean on a boat, because if all of a sudden a child got sick or decided that they were homesick and needed to go back to mom, that's a really hard trip. My 8th grader went to Catalina. When I had another 8th grader, he went to the San Diego trip that they did at the time. So I've sent my kids. I love these trips. I think they're great, but I didn't think Catalina was age appropriate. This is age appropriate, and I'm really excited that you found something for these kids, because you're right, they do deserve a fun treat, and they worked hard, and you guys have built a great relationship with them. But it's a lot easier to get a kid home from the Grand Canyon than it is from an island in the ocean. So thank you for everything that you did to find something educational and fun for them.
And I like that you're gonna have somebody from their group come and explain everything. That's the best thing to do.
I'm a fan of this trip. I think this is really cool. I think that kids thrive when they're given an opportunity to reach expectations and earn something like this. And so I think that expecting them to work hard throughout the year and show the Falcon way, and then rewarding them with something where, yeah, they are young, but we're going to take them and trust them to behave and to make good choices when they're away from their parents. I think that that's really neat. And like I've told the high school teachers that do this, I think it's a neat opportunity for you guys as well. I love that you have good relationships with your students and that you're taking the time and opportunity to, this isn't a super exotic trip, but it's still a fun trip that you get to take and for work, which is kind of cool.
It's a good starting point.
I agree.
Then you work up to things like Catalina and then to, Spain and Poland. And, my daughter went to Spain and Italy. My son went to Italy. So, like I said, I'm a big advocate of these trips. I just like that it's more age appropriate. So, and jumping right into Catalina kind of felt like they, we used to do like Astro Camp and then Catalina. Like it's a building block, and so, starting at the Grand Canyon is a great building block for those future trips too. Any other questions or comments from you?
Thank you for the work you put into this, and I loved your attitude. What can we do better?
Yep.
So thank you for that too. That's part of it.
It's about. Thank you.
So much. We
So
look
have the
forward to-
forms next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just when it comes to the board for approval, just make sure it's all together.
Thank
Talk with Luke,
you.
he's great at it.
Also, when you guys mentioned the committee and fundraising, I love that fundraising is part of it to make it more affordable for families. And I'm totally gonna make a plug to the Presby Pickens market that Sean Uphoff does, because flea markets are just fun, and it's tons of, if people donate, then you get that for pretty much nothing, and I bet the kids can have fun with that too.
And we might do one of those dome nights, and
Dome nights,
I
car washes.
I want Nurse
Yeah,
Rebecca
we've always
to
been-
do a bake sale for us.
Bake sales are great.
She's amazing.
There's
Old
all
school.
just cute, so people are gonna help them out when they see that it's perfect for you.
Yeah, I think car wash was gonna be
We've
one
always
of our
been
big-
successful.
The family feast day is a great time though, as
Yep.
Dwight, or
It's
as
one for
Kate
you, you,
said,
and you.
for- Dwight Johnson used to stand up every year at McDowell Mountain and talk
Yes.
about the tax credits. You get a lot of grandparents in there that would love to do that, and so it's a great time to discuss that.
Old school.
I go back to what worked, Val.
Doing it.
Timing of the year is perfect.
Right, yeah, it's right there in November, so. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about discipline policies specific to school threats. Before we get into this, I do want to caution the board that we can't talk about specific instances or students because it will violate their privacy. So this conversation needs to be just on policy and procedure, not specific threats or even examples in the school. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. J.
Yeah, so I have our two psychologists here, wonderful psychologists, so Lavona Montgomery and Peter McGloin. If you guys can come up. The reason I brought them is you asked specifically to discuss threats. So when a threat comes into the school, one of the first people that is notified of that is the school psychologist. They are trained on how to do threat assessments. They are trained on de-escalation. They are trained on the latest and greatest processes with that. And so I just thought it would be better for you to ask them specifically about some of the things that they do. So a threat comes in, we notify MCSO. We typically have an officer on campus. If she is gone, they typically give us a substitute for the period of time that she's gone. Or we would call, 911 if it was that serious, or we would call the non-emergency line. We evaluate the situation as an admin team. Principals are very good about calling me immediately with, advice like, what should I do in this situation? The first thing we typically do is identify where the student is, get the student out of the situation. So they've been trained on how to do that. We have purchased 10 metal detectors, wands. So now that if we did have a concern about a weapon on campus, we would wand that bag before searching it. But the key is to get the bag, obviously, if there's a threat, if it's a threat of violence, is trained to get a hold of the backpack and get the student out of the situation in the most calm possible way. From there, once we get to the office, then it's a question of bringing in our school psychologist to maybe talk with the student, or counselor talk to the student, and go from there. Most of the threats that we do receive as schools are through social media. So there's a lot of times we don't know specifically maybe who it is, so it's just a random threat. So we have to kind of go through that process of who reported it, where did you hear this from, start talking to students. And we're always looking at what point do you go to a lockdown, right? You go to a lockdown when you feel there's immediate concern and you're going to err on the side of caution and go to that level. A lot of times we will work with our MCSO officer about that. Like, do you feel are we at that point yet? Or I'll make that call if I need to with the principal, or the principal will make that call if they can't get a hold of me on the erring on the side of caution. But when you look at threats specifically, whether it's online or a student says something in class, it's overheard, the kids are trained to do see something, say something. We've partnered with the coalition on that. So they understand, they can QR code to see something, say something, they can go to a trusted adult. We've got security guards at every site. So once we get to a real threat, and I think that's the bulk of what you want to talk about tonight, is what happens when a student makes a threat against a school beyond that initial understanding if it's immediate and you need to go into lockdown. Say it's not that, but we have some threats being made. At that point, we turn it over to the school psych. So I'm going to let them talk about what the threat assessment process looks like and kind of how they go from there.
So I didn't want to inundate you with too much paperwork, but just give you a couple forms. And the flow chart is kind of speaking to what Dr. J is saying. If there's an imminent threat, it goes directly to law enforcement. So they're going to deal with the whole situation. We're not part of that process. But if it's not an imminent threat, if it was, the drawings, the social media, a verbal threat to somebody, another student, then the site administrator, the principals from the campus will bring their core team together, the school psychologist being one of the members, often the counselor, the assistant principal, sometimes the SRO or another teacher that knows the student well will be part of the team too. And that core team will first do that screener form that I passed out to you. So just we're discussing the situation, the incident that happened, seeing what we know about the situation, and if it's obvious that it was, a transient threat, meaning there was no real threat to the situation, it was made in frustration, it was, made as a joke, then we wouldn't go into a full threat assessment. It would be, mediation between the teacher and the student or a couple students, disciplinary consequences that could address the problem there, and the process ends there. But if there is, we can't answer all the questions on the screening form, we don't know all the details of the situation, or we are thinking that it could be a substantive threat, a substantive threat, then the team would come together in pairs, and a couple team members would interview the parents, a couple team members would interview the student, and we're looking for protective factors and risk factors to help understand the situation and what the level of threat the team feels it's going to be. And so, some of the questions we're looking for protective and stabilizing and risk factors are, the threat warning signs, precipitating events, the emotional status of the student, their attitudes and beliefs, their behavior at home and in the community, any behavioral changes that have been observed, their past history with violence or anger or mental health, drugs and alcohol, just a lot of different details that is going to fill in some of the gaps in our understanding, and that's the whole point of the interviews, is to get all of this information so we can bring it to the team and make that determination of what level of threat it's going to be. And this process is really good as far as getting to know the families and getting to know the kids. And ideally, this interview process, they're seeing how much you're investing into it and how much you care about them. And it really lends itself well to these follow-up conversations when we're trying to problem solve and come up with those reintegration plans to help the student get back into school and make sure this doesn't happen again. So we're getting ahead of the behaviors. Maybe it's as simple as changing their schedules around or having the searches on the way in to campus. Or as big as needing placement changes to a different school. So, Lavona, anything you want to add to this?
Let's talk elementary for a minute. Lavona is very, very well versed in this and is doing great work. Talk about maybe some of the differences you see when you're dealing with our youngest kids and when they're making threats and how you handle that.
So we're seeing a lot of threats across the board with our students. Whether that's self-harm, we have had a tremendous amount of self-harm threats. So just to give you maybe an idea, last year we had about 15 self-harm threats. We do use the Columbia suicide severity rating scale to determine whether or not that's suicidal ideation or suicidal behavior. So we're really trying to utilize actual assessment tools so that we can best determine if they need a higher level of care. Then when it comes to threats to the school or to other students, staff members perhaps, then we're using that Dewey-Cornell model, which is that comprehensive school assessment, threat assessments guidelines, or the CSTAG, you'll see it referenced as that as well. So we do have very structured assessment scales that we're using, going through to see, as Peter mentioned, what their belief systems are. We're looking at any sort of protective factors that they might have, what type of friend group support systems they might have. So we're looking for resilience as well as any red flags that might be evident. And then we make those judgment calls from there. Where we're always involving the SROs with those when it gets to that level. For those suicide threats, self-injurious threats, we have involved the crisis intervention team as well. So all of the assessments that we're using at the elementary level and I believe at the secondary level are all proven to be effective. They're utilized nationwide. So for example, the Columbia has 100% reporting rate as far as being accurate because it goes into history of self-harm and suicidal ideation. So we are using some effective tools right now in the school. I hope to see a reduction actually in our younger age especially, making self-harm statements or harming somebody else type statements. We have way too many.
And I'm just going to share as a principal for many years, the numbers that we've seen, and it continues to go up. So the number of crisis team calls last year, year before that, are very high. So what that tells me is that our kids are dealing with a lot. And people have different opinions on, what the school's role in that is, but the way we look at it is we are, when the kids are on campus, it's in loco parentis. We are their parents during that time, and we're working hard for them to make sure they're safe, make sure that they're fed, making sure that they're taken care of, and as we've always said, cared for. Like, that's our key, is we're always caring for our kids. And so what is troubling, and it's not just the Fountain Hills, I want to be very clear about that. When I went to the law conference, the number one behavior issues in the state right now, number one, hands down, is kindergarten. Okay? And kindergarten is not a result of COVID and the pandemic. What I think it is, and this is just an opinion, is I think it's the cell phone screen generation. Mm-hmm. But we are seeing behaviors and the psychologists are working around the clock with things that come up. Now, again, I don't want to make that doom or gloom. A lot of times these are kids, they learn these phrases, and they may say a phrase they've heard on a cartoon or on a YouTube video, and they may not fully understand what that means. So that's a transient threat, right? Like, they don't fully understand what I just said. They've heard people say that. So, and I'm not just saying that because they're here, but we have two of the best psychologists in the state. They are so good at what they do, and they handle so much for our principals, and our principals know that. So it's really great that they're so versed in these. And when I went to the latest threat assessment training, it was the Dewey model was what they showed us. And we went through, and I believe the expert on that was the one presenting, if I'm not mistaken. So we're keeping up to date with the latest. It is just, it's really a concern across the country, across the state. So I don't want people watching or hearing this to think that this is a Fountain Hills only issue. It is not. And then what will happen is, once they make a final determination, and you'll see on one of the pages it has, is it a substantive threat or is it a transient threat? So if it's transient, then it'll be handled at the site. So they've determined, a kid said, I'm going to kill you, or something like that, and it's more of a phrase they've heard, or they don't fully understand that. They've determined there's no real threat there. Then Ms. Reichler comes in, does discipline, talks to parents, and we try to teach the child, when you say that, look at how much, disruption that causes. At the high school, middle school and high school level, we have seen MCSO start to charge for disruption of campus, not necessarily for the threat. To do that for the threat is a much higher threshold, but they're starting to charge for disruption of a school environment. Because if everyone's pulled off their job, and the school possibly has to go into lockdown, or we have to have extra officers come down, they are starting to charge for that. Now, where those charges will go is yet to be seen. So if it is a substantive threat, then we go to the code of conduct, and we look at First of all, how severe is the threat? What is being said? Is it detailed? Is it specific? Is it concerning enough to where we might need to look at a long-term suspension or expulsion or something along those lines? But I do want to be clear that that doesn't always solve your issue, right? Because again, if no one's having contact with a student who's struggling, now no one knows where they're at that point. So we have, being small, both of them spend a lot of time one-on-one with students. And one of the best preventative things you can do is have kids involved in school, a good, positive experience. Frank was brought in just for that reason. So this year I have no students right now that I see on a weekly basis. I had one for a while, but last year I had 3 or 4. And that just check-in by the superintendent to them, I could see if they're ready to maybe have an issue or things are starting to spiral. So the more adults that are on there, the better. Him and I started years ago, the board game club. And what that was, is it was a way for us to find what we call isolate students. Isolate students are students who don't connect with anyone. They eat lunch by themselves. They're always by themselves. I always had a rule as principal that any new student had someone to eat lunch with on the first day. I still ask our principals to do that, connect them so they have a good transition into our schools. But these are students who have been given that opportunity and they still choose to be isolated. Peter has done a fantastic job of growing that club, and for a lot of kids, it is their one thing. How many you have this year?
16 right now.
Okay, how many have you had in the past?
It's usually kind of keep it about that,
Okay.
up to 20 maybe.
Yeah, I know the first year was pretty big. We had a lot. The first year we got off the ground, we had quite a bit. And at the elementary level, Lavona finds opportunities, and she's starting Junior Falcon Cheer with herself, which is pretty awesome, to build school spirit, a positive, activity on campus for kids so that they have another reason to come. And then through the mentoring program with Golden Eagle, we can connect a kid maybe with a mentor who is also checking in with them. So once a kid has been identified that they're having those concerns, we really kind of overwhelm them with support to make sure that they're okay. We also have been known to have MCSO go out to the house, do a check, especially if there's a specific concern. If there's a concern of, say, unattended weapons or something like that, we will call DCS and report that as a neglect issue. We have a very strong relationship with MCSO. They will do, if I ask them to go do a check on a student, they will go over, they will talk to the parent, they will verify whether there's a threat or not. And on the substantive ones, what will happen is MCSO will not, they can't make a determination, but a lot of times what they will say to us is, we do not believe this is a credible threat, so go ahead and discipline it, or this is a credible threat, we're going to charge, and then we would take it to a different level of discipline. So we got to find a balance of holding kids accountable, but also caring for them and keeping an eye on them and getting them the help that they need so that doesn't fester and grow into a bigger problem.
And if I can just add one more thing, statistically speaking, there is no profile of a particular student that might act on those statements. It is across, affluent to non-affluent, different demographics. There is no set profile of a student who will follow through with a threat. And thus the reason that the comprehensive threat assessment is so necessary is that we help to just kind of pick that apart and weed out some of those red flags that we might not see otherwise, that, maybe some of these students have good grades. Maybe they attend school all the time. Maybe they come from an affluent background. All of those things are factors, yes, but they are not determining factors. And when you look at the statistics nationwide, there is no profile of a student who will follow through. It is across all lines. So I think us having a comprehensive threat assessment team and process is what's going to help us to get ahead of that.
And beyond that, it's prevention. So Lavona asked, and we love when our staff thinks outside the box and says, I want to do something, we always say, do it. So she said, hey, I want to really do parent university. And I said, run with that. And the reason for that is to get our parents to understand that it's okay that maybe you don't have all the answers as a parent. I know I didn't, still don't. But having other people to ask, talk, so the first one's on anxiety and depression.
Well, the first one was this morning.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that was on speech and language.
Okay,
Yep.
so speech and language identification, now we're doing anxiety, depression. We might talk about, cell phone and screen time. And so we're going to keep running these as a prevention. That's one prevention. The culture and climate of the campus, that's another prevention. So the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, the BMX, PTO show that's put on, the costume walk, all those things are ways for kids to have a good, fun experience at school and connect with others. So it's a multi-layered approach to how you deal with these types of things, and there's no way to predict the unpredictable. So you're trying to make sure that you know every kid's name, you know every kid's story. Our counselors and psychologists are spending time with kids, helping them connect with clubs and activities and adults, and collectively, the goal is to reduce that and hopefully never have a serious issue.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
How many parents attended your parent university this morning?
So we had about 11 that were there today. It was held at Little Falcons Preschool. We had both of our fabulous speech language pathologists that came and presented, and the parents that attended were very engaged, had great questions. They stayed the duration of the time and even had, we put out a QR code for them to give us some feedback, and the feedback so far has been all positive. So I would say that's at least a small win to have almost a dozen
It's a huge win, yeah.
people
And
there. So
any ones coming at night? Like, are there going to be any?
we do have the on the 19th is anxiety, depression in children and teens.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and again, this goes back to my comment regarding having parents on campus, because I believe that when a parent is involved in their child's education and they're on campus, it is so much easier to build that bond and have those open conversations, and for them to ask questions. At any given moment, I could have asked any teacher that my child had, questions about how they were doing, what their attitude was. I mean, sometimes I got information I didn't even ask for, just, because you build that connection. So I really appreciate that you're doing that. It's just another step to get our parents involved and to know what's going on in their child's life at school.
To say, because I was the one that asked for this discussion, and honestly, it wasn't so much on this side, but I do have some things that I'd love to talk to you guys about, because I love that the word connection has been used a lot, because that's the opposite of addiction, not sobriety, it's connection. And so I love that you said we overwhelm with support, because I think that is going to be the way that we help these students. And I think that we in Fountain Hills have a unique situation where we are small, and so we can reach out and we can hopefully help students that are struggling. So I also loved I forgot to mention this in my comments earlier about Coffee with Cane, but I love that you brought up the idea of a media fast. I think that that's something that would be
Oh, yes, I talked
largely
about
beneficial.
I challenged the coalition to, since they do so much with drug and alcohol prevention, I challenged them to maybe do a week of, put your cell phones away for a week, see if you can go 7 days without, social media and make it a contest, and to try to break that addiction to technology.
Yeah, I love that idea. And the marketer in me was thinking of the ideas like play at the park or bring a book, borrow a book, because, inviting kids to do more connective activities would be awesome. So I love that we're looking at the ways that we can help and maybe reach these students before it gets to this place. Because I think that what I was really interested in discussing is what policies we have to kind of, I like that MCSO is essentially charging for a disruption of the school environment, because I think that's kind of what we need to do with policy, is say that, we can't even entertain having these kinds of threats made, because now that it is becoming trendy, students are becoming emboldened and thinking maybe it's a way to get the attention that they need, but they're not recognizing the weight of what it can do. And so,
But I think they do, though, when we deal with it, they are so disrupted in their lives as a result of it. Like, they're talking to an officer, they're talking to a psychologist, they're talking to a principal. Sometimes they're talking to the superintendent. Their parents are coming in and being disrupted, obviously, from work. And they see how severe just some words can be. And again, at the younger levels, I don't think a lot of them fully understand what they're saying. So we can't have, like the first time they say something, they can't come back to school. We gotta work through that. At the high school and middle school level, if it rises to a level of such a concern, we do err on the side of caution. And I do believe that the courts are backing schools that are taking, precaution of school safety, okay? But again, it really comes down to, is it substantive? Is it transient? Is it credible? Is it non-credible? Is it attention getting, or is there something really there? And I can tell you, I've seen both sides of this, and there are some that I've had that are really concerning, and not just here, and 25 years, 26 years of doing this, and those are held, obviously, police, school district, there's a lot of consequences that go with it.
I guess, because I think they're, at the younger age, absolutely. I mean, I'm a mom of a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. I'm sure they say a lot of things that they don't really mean and that they don't completely understand. But at the same time, that's it. And I love that you also said that we don't cause it. It's not really, there's a lot of gray areas to where the school's responsibility is. And so I think it's important to recognize it's often not our fault, but it is our problem. It is something we have to deal with if kids are coming and saying things that they shouldn't be saying. If the parents aren't addressing it, then that is something that we have to deal with. And so just like I would tell my son, you can't say those kinds of things, threats to other people. I think that's something that at school, you cannot say that, right? Like, there needs to be that understanding that they cannot say that. At what point is the threshold if they threaten somebody else? It's more serious, it's automatically serious. We're not gonna say, oh, well, they were just joking. Is that middle school, is that high school?
No threat that I'm aware of is ever, let's go talk it out and go back to class. I mean, we're talking, we typically on any threat go the maximum first offense of a 9-day suspension. Okay, that's typically what we do, all right? To go beyond that, now you're talking about a change of placement, you're talking about a hearing officer, you're talking about long-term suspension, expulsion. It has to obviously rise to a level for a hearing officer to agree with that, because remember, that's a hearing officer is an independent person, like a judge, and we're both presenting our cases of whether you're going to get that or not. And then, but the other thing I just want to say is there's no perfect way to do this. I mean, this is what I studied and spent a lot of time on. You're predicting the unpredictable. So we've had students who have been school shooters, who have been expelled, who have come back to the school they're expelled at and follow through. So there's no perfect way to do it, is what I'm saying. It's really a case by case. And what you see is we have a team of people with law enforcement, psychologists, counselors, teachers, principals, district administration, crisis team. Sometimes even doctors are involved, because sometimes I've seen in the past where a student may need clearance from a psychologist to return to school. So there are a lot of things that go into it, and there's not a one-size-fit-all solution. I just don't think there is.
Which is why in the end we trust you guys so much to use judgment. With the core team, I like that it's a team of people, again, that support aspect. Do we include the parents? Or like how early or when do we include
So parents are notified of a threat immediately, okay? And if the parent is not cooperative, then I immediately have MCS go to the house. And I've done that before. I also may call DCS if I feel like it's a neglect issue or they're not taking it serious. So parents are notified if it's on a threat. Because one of the first things we're going to ask is, are there weapons in your home? Most parents are very honest about that and will say yes or no. And sometimes MCSO will go out and have a conversation and check that. But parents are involved because part of the threat assessment is an interview with the parent. So the parent may not know. What we saw just going back about a month or so ago, when we had the online threats that were happening across the state, and I shared this with a lot of you. I was at a conference, it was all superintendents the day that we had some of these same situations. There was a panel of 3 legislators from the state House and Senate there. It got brought up about the threats, and they were unaware of that, like as legislators. And so they asked the superintendents, how many of you this week have had an issue in your school? Every hand in the room went up, but me at the time. An hour later, my hand went up too. So what we're seeing is it's the TikTok, it's the Instagram, whatever it is popular now. It's the social media trend. Sometimes the trend is destroy a bathroom. We've had that one in the past. We've had the peppers. We've had randomly go do something mean to somebody. We've had the threats. So
exit signs.
Yeah, it gets popular. And so what we have to do in our district is get out to the kids and say, this is how we're going to handle that. I know our kids know our expectations, and I know they know that we take it seriously. And I will say that in comparison to other places I've been and seen, our numbers are much, much lower. But for a district of our size, what concerns me more is not threats against people in school, it's threats against themselves is what we're seeing an increase of. That's what's really concerning to us, especially at the younger ages, like they already know about that, is very concerning.
I was going to make just a quick comment. I think the parent university is fantastic because parents may want to come and just get this information, and a lot of times they think they're the only ones going through that. And just by talking to other people, they realize, oh, wait a minute, this is what normally happens in a household. And that's the biggest thing, because sometimes they're isolated, especially if they're young and maybe they don't have family members nearby. So I think that's fantastic.
And tips and tricks, eating dinner together, have a conversation with your children, how's it going?
Exactly.
They'll say, especially with substance abuse, how to get out of a bad situation, text a code to your parent calls. There's a lot of tips and tricks that they can give parents to help them through those challenging times. Every parent goes through some challenging times. And so having the school be there as a partner and a resource is something we've been building, but we're taking it to a whole new level this year.
And our mentors are fantastic.
Yeah.
That was, just another adult.
And can I actually just add on to that? Because the theme of connecting and connecting kids to the campus and to other adults and peers, that's what this lends itself. Dr. J knows from his dissertation, that's the #1 way to get ahead of threats to the schools is to have kids that are connected to multiple adults and clubs. So I feel like going forward, if there's opportunities to build more clubs and more activities, for these kids to get connected to, that would be a huge thing for us. And that's a lot of part of this process and the problem-solving process. That's usually, one of the main areas is how can we build this student's world up and build their connections and have lots of, wonderful supports for them, which will get ahead of these types of behaviors and difficulties in the future.
And at the high school, we have the advisory period, which is another way of doing that because that teacher is responsible for those kids all year. So they spend, 20 minutes a day checking grades, checking attendance. And remember, students who do act out and follow through with these types of threats, all the studies I've seen, 4 to 5 stressors in their lives, 4 to 5, factors that could have been noticed by somebody. We train all our staff on that. I did that earlier this year. And typically they leak out information about what they're going to do because they want credit for it or they want some kind of attention to it. So if every student has multiple adults in their lives, which we've really set up, and I feel proud of that, one of them, if not all of them, should be noticing that, okay, grades are down, they just don't look maybe clean, or, you know, they look tired, behaviors have changed. I know the parents maybe are going through some stuff at home, there could have been a death, and you start adding up those stressors, well, that becomes more of a red flag on this. When nothing else is going on in their lives and they're just saying things they heard online, well, they're trained to be able to understand that, but we still make it a big deal so the kid knows, even if you do it again, it's going to be a more elevated discipline. So it's just not a one-size-fits-all to the discipline side.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions, so I'll try to ask them quickly. I love that you said more clubs and more activities. Have we considered doing an assembly to get in front of something like this, and at the same time that we set the expectations around it, we could offer resources and point our high school students and middle school students towards more clubs?
We did at the elementary. Mr. Rudolphi paid for the Be Kind project, and a lot of this comes from relationships with their peers. So the whole point of that was how to be kind, how to make connections, and then for teachers, again, the alertness of that. At the middle and high school level, we've had the PTO do some fun activities with them. But I really do believe, and Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but our high school kids are pretty connected. I mean, most of the kids are involved in something, and if they're not, Peter's pretty much aware of that. I mean, we could definitely do better, but what we're finding is that it's not just, it's in all walks of life, people are not wanting to do as much as they used to. You've seen a drop in so many social activities, and so in the last couple of years, you know, social education has been a hot topic. So I just think that there's a way to do things where it doesn't disrupt the academic side. Our academics are strong right now, got to keep them there, but we're also finding a way to make some social opportunities for kids so they have a fun, good environment to be in, because that's going to be the difference. Go ahead.
I think I like that those clubs or activities also give the kids opportunities to lead as well as, you know, gain confidence just in different ways. It's,
yeah.
I mean, you see how much it does for little kids. I know it. I mean, and I know how much it does for me when I am able to learn something or accomplish something. So do we only involve the MCSO officer if it's like a substantiated threat, or are they made aware of?
They're involved in everything.
Okay.
Everything.
And then when we do have students to question, are the parents involved in the questioning? Are they present for things?
It depends. Sometimes you don't have time to do that, and we're not going to do that. So we're going to make sure we take care of our business. I always had, as a principal, once I had the situation under control, it was just my way of doing it. I always invited the parent in for a search because I didn't want them to feel like, you know, anything negative about it. I would find probably 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5 out of 10 times when I offered them to come down for a search, they said, no, you go and do it, just give me a call back. But letting them know they were being searched a lot of times was a good way of connecting with parents. If it's a potential weapon, no, like we're taking it and we're scanning it and we're taking complete control of that till we know, and then we call. If it were a vape or something like that, we might take the time to say, you want to come down? Because a lot of times I'd like the parent to be involved in that so the kid has to face the parent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's good because it does push a little bit back of that responsibility
Absolutely.
to the parent, where it's, you know, we're trying to help them, but it does start at home. And then, so when you mentioned outside placement, do we initiate that because of things, or is that something that a parent eventually initiates?
That would be our district.
Okay. And then probably I think my last question. When we have an incident, how do we get in front of it as far as our community? Because since we do live in a small town, in the end, things get out, whether it's rumor, whether it's truth. And so even if it's just rumor that's happening, it ends up getting out to the community, maybe even before we're able to address it. So are we sending out transparent type information that people are like, okay, I know what's going on, or are they hearing it from their students and thinking?
I would say, again, it depends on the situation. So we had an issue that's public knowledge, because we sent a letter with a situation in our middle school cafeteria, and we sent exactly what happened. And we just put it all out there, said this is what happened. We had it, and I didn't receive any calls. I don't believe the middle school received any calls on that. Other ones, if it's a transient threat and it's something where it's not, the school was never in kind of any kind of danger, there was never a concern about going into lockdown, kid made a comment to another kid, it's being addressed by the principal, that one may be handled by the principal along with those parents and addressed. But if we believe as it's a disruption, or it rises to a level that we as parents would also want to know that, then we do send something. So I think it's a case by case, but most of the time we err on the side of sending something. I do tell the principals, I think you're always better off over communicating than under communicating.
Absolutely, especially in a small town, because like I said, even if it's just something that we've decided isn't serious, if a parent hears it and thinks that we didn't communicate it to them, I think in their mind, it might be more serious than it is. So I appreciate that. I think it's better
Again,
to
it's
set a caution.
not a perfect science again, but we also make ourselves available to all parents at all times. Most of the parents have my phone number, they call me directly, and I typically address it with them real quick over the phone. And that's what I would suggest to parents, is if you have a concern or a question, we're so available to you. And like I said, I have parents call me all the time, stop me at Safeway, I have no problem. I know that I have to live my job every day, 24 hours a day. So they call, we clear it up, and we move on. But I think sometimes, you're right, sometimes if the communication maybe we think is sufficient, but people start trending on it, it starts becoming more and more talked about, then we will reach out to some of those parents that we know are concerned and maybe have a one-on-one with them and talk to them. So we try to over-communicate, but sometimes, that doesn't always work as you hope. So we can always learn from that and keep trying.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then one last thing for Lavana. At the elementary school, I know, like I said, it's not our fault. A lot of times it's just something that we have to deal with the students, because sometimes they just come to us a little bit volatile and fragile. In those situations, how are we, I love the parent university, but again, there's going to be those kids that just don't have that support system.
Mm-hmm.
How are we approaching that problem? I know for a while we did kind of the reset room. We have mentors, which I think is wonderful. I guess maybe just your opinion on how we could address that and help those students that just come to us with the...
That's kind of a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and maybe it's not something that really is answerable tonight, but just because, like I said, it's not our fault, but it is something we have to deal with, and those kids are not really able to regulate at that age. That's one of the things that they're learning.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of the social emotional learning, because I don't think that these are things that can be taught in a textbook type of way. I think it's more experience. But, and that's difficult for our teachers, I guess. But when you get a student that is constantly having these issues, and so it's not a school issue, it's probably more of a home issue.
Mm-hmm.
What are the resources that we have available to help that student, since it's not necessarily academic, but it affects their education?
Right. I think that is one of the biggest areas of need in our elementary aged population. That I know it is hot button, is that social emotional learning. A lot of our students don't get that outside of school. There are a lot of curriculums that we could be implementing that, help with regulating emotions. And that's our goal, right, is to get young kids to be able to self-regulate, so to self-evaluate. Where am I right now? What do I need to do to get back where I need to be? That really is the direction that we need to be focusing, in my opinion. because we have so many kids that struggle, now whether that is maybe they have a diagnosis that keeps them from maybe understanding nonverbal cues or facial expressions or anything like that. But what I do see a deficit is kids sometimes have difficulty equating an emotion with what does that feel like. So for example, they hear anxiety a lot or depression. They hear those words and they use those words. But when you ask them, what does that feel like, they cannot tell you. And so just breaking it down as simple as, recognizing when I'm angry, it feels like this. Even as far as explaining those things and practicing those things would be very beneficial for a lot of our students. They don't know how to put into words. When I'm frustrated, it feels like this, or when I'm scared. And a lot of kids will act out because they don't have a healthy way, they don't know how to put that in a verbal way for it to make sense.
So are we helping them make that connection where it's...
So I'm
how do you
hoping that's what
verbalize
we're
it?
doing, yes, is that, but we really do, our hands are kind of tied when it comes to some of that particular stuff, just because it is an area that, do we want to venture into that social emotional learning? So we're
It's a gray area because it's
It
not
is gray.
necessarily academic.
Right.
And so
But it
that's
doesn't,
tough.
but it doesn't need necessarily to be for everybody, one, okay, so
Right.
that's one issue. And two, it doesn't need to, take away from the academics, so I think we probably need to explore with the guidance from those who are working with our students every day, what would be a good model, what would work, at what point do you work on these skills? Because again, you don't want to, I agree, you don't want to take away, put kids through something they already know and take away from the academic. I don't think that's what they're talking about.
Right.
But they have more hours in the day than are required. Our stay's pretty long as a school. So there are opportunities for the people like Lamona and Peter to work with kids on those skills without taking away from their academic time.
Yes, I guess my concern with social emotional learning is that I don't see it working in a classroom setting, right? To me, I see it working in a clubs or an activity setting where it's like, okay, if you want to do the fun things, you have to regulate your emotions, right? You can't be angry and throw scissors, right? Like you
Sure,
can't
right,
throw
it is
paint.
more of a tier
You're-
2, tier 3
Yes, I feel
type
like it's a
intervention,
experience learning.
But I think it's okay as a whole in general to talk about character ed. I think it's okay to talk about what are healthy ways that we can cope when we get angry? What are healthy ways that we can deal with frustration? I think that is
I think you get
okay.
into gray area with that because parents will disagree.
And then the ones who are struggling with that can go to that tier 2 intervention where it's
Yes.
small groups and another opportunity where they can connect with their sponsor, their counselor, whoever is running the club, and the other kids in there and learn from each other
Yes.
and learn some more of these skills, where it's not just this one-on-one type of situation where we don't have enough time to get to every kid who needs that. But if we have these small groups built in somehow, I don't know where that would be yet, but that would be
And it
a nice.
doesn't have to be, like I said, a universal, like, here's the workbook. Like, what I'm saying, like, I was in kindergarten this week, okay? And 2 students were kind of fighting over a crayon. And the emotion over this crayon, like, and again, like, they're fine, right? But I went over, I talked to them for a little bit, but we do need to teach them that it's okay that I didn't get the crayon. And I do need to share. And I will get it the next time. And I need to, regulate that. Because if you don't, what you end up having is disruption after disruption after disruption in those classrooms, the teachers can't teach. And so we have to find a balance of how do you do it without it taking away from academics, without our proficiency and growth and letter grades, all that dropping, And I think we've done that at the high school very well over the years, okay? Like I said, through, small groups. We used to have Empowered for students who had substance abuse. We had grief, small group grief, people who lost someone, and that, really, it's hard to concentrate when you're going through grief, so having other people available, that's still teaching those skills, but it's not for everybody. It's not forcing every single person to have to go through that. So I think we should explore how can we let our psychologists do the work they need to do and so provide them with the tools they need to do that, because we are seeing behaviors that I have not seen in 26 years. Okay.
And I think it's important that we decide if we want to be proactive or reactive.
Yes.
And right now, I think we are so very much reactive because we have to be, that we need to open the doors and explore how to be proactive. How do we get ahead of these behaviors? Some of these behaviors might last 45 minutes, an hour. We're losing academic time as it is. And so
are there students in that room who
Right.
are experiencing that? Now, we've also been pushing, and Ms. Reichler's been great about this, is highly encouraging parents to come to school with their kid and sit with them.
That's
Okay?
awesome.
And no, we're all for that, trust me. We got, like I said, we have no issue with our parents being in our schools. I've been pushing, I can't get any, we're pushing it. Okay, and so when they sit for a day and see that, that's very eye-opening. And so we're doing that. So it does start with parents. So between them coming to school, from the parent university, we've even talked about with discipline, to be able to return back. Parents, you have to come and possibly sit with our psychologists and talk about some of the, we can't go to a point where we can't enforce it, but we're definitely trying to do that. So it's a work in progress, but what I will say is we have a very strong team of very qualified people that are working with the kids, and it's helping, but the landscape is changing right now. And we definitely, I agree 100% with Lavona that we are a lot of times reactive, and we really need to be proactive. And you've seen, as you saw with a lot of our special ed outsourcing, those numbers are huge. And so we really need to think about, do we need to have a level D placement in Fountain Hills to reduce that? The problem is finding a teacher. And that's going to be more and more an issue as we go.
I think we absolutely want to be proactive, and I think that things like the parent university is exactly that. So I appreciate you taking that on and doing that. And the next one you said was the 19th. Where is that at and what time?
that one is at McDowell Mountain Elementary, 6:30 in the evening.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you for staying, coming. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you for all your time.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
that was really
we're all done.
informative, we appreciate it. Okay, next, future action, the SPED presentation, I believe that'll be at our November 20th meeting, and then strategies to boost enrollment, club policies, and the ESA will all be after the new board takes its seat in January. So probably over January, February, March, you'll see those things. Dates of upcoming meetings, November 20th and December 4th, both here at 6 o'clock in the Learning Center. And with that, I move to adjourn.
And I have just a quick question. Friday, Veterans Day, what is the schedule? Because it seems like,
That's not on our agenda, can you please?
I'll send it to you.
okay, so thanks.
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, there's a motion on the table already. So I have a motion to adjourn. I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?